Hackathon Fireside Chat series. And today I'm in conversation with Satish Gupta, the co founder of Slang Labs. And we're going to talk about the trends in artificial intelligence and machine learning. So, welcome to the conversation, Satish. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Rajiv.
Satish, let me start by asking you, what do you do at Slang Labs?
Rajiv, this is a very interesting story. Slang Lab is born out of desire to make technology accessible to everyone, regardless of whether they know English or they are tech savvy, including our kids and parents. So the idea is that uh, in India there are so many apps, and what if apps are useful for everybody through voice? Because voice is kind of a new natural way of communication for people. So that is the genesis of Slang Labs. So when we went out and tried to build voice support within some apps, we realized that it is not easy for developers. It's somebody has to understand, let's say, speech recognition or natural language understanding, and that you cannot expect from each and everybody, all developer ecosystem. So that is where we started building this concept, voice assistant as a service. So let's say we have an SDK which you can drop into your application, and then let's say your retail application, it kind of provides you the basic and advanced user journeys in the app. So let's say you typically somebody will search for a product, somebody will buy a product. So all those things can be very easily integrated in your application through Slang Lab and provide a voice interface to all this. So it's a kind of an intelligent voice assistant. It is like a Siri or Alexa inside your app, tuned for your app, without you needing to understand more difficult concepts, and you still work in your business logic and typical workflows in the application. So that's what we are trying to do. We are like voice assistant as a service platform for mobile as well as web applications.
That's interesting. I'm sure our parents and grandparents would find that very useful. So, Satish, you're aware the hackathon is bringing together developers to build solutions for the future of healthcare, education, the workplace, and customer experience. If you could share some thoughts on the problems that the developers can pick to solve with AI in these areas.
Sure. See, I think we have to kind of take a step back and look at our journey as a like IT industry or software industry. So in 80s or 90s, when the programming came into being, it was applied to one field after things were automated: banking, ticket booking, now retail, like all sorts of things. So it uh, it is said that software is eating the world. Similarly, machine learning will also touch each and every aspect of business and life. And it would, just like software was automating the workflow processes, ML will automate the concept, or like say coming up with the decision logic to an extent. So just like the inherent scalability of software offered unprecedented speed, like 24/7 you can access a bank today. Similarly, the inherent scalability of machine learning will offer unprecedented personalization. So it would be like services that are specialized for you by knowing you over a period of time. So for example, let's say I'm a student and I'm learning something. Depending upon my capacity or my interest or my level, the lectures as well as the problems can be customized for me so that I learn faster and become better. And almost all fields that I can think of, like healthcare, education, banking, finance. So all of these would kind of be touched by machine learning over a period of time. Um, for example, in healthcare, I'm sure that in next 2 decades it will transform, mostly because of the medical sciences, but also ML will assist in drug discovery, monitoring, different kind of testing, scanning. All those things will come into play. So I think it is more like this general way of thinking is that if you have a problem where you have a bunch of heuristics that you use to come up with a solution, or you are using the knowledge that has been accumulated in, or expertise that is accumulated in human beings over a period of time, those things are good problems to tackle uh, through machine learning. I just want to say that machine learning is not to replace human. So, for example, as a doctor, they will never be relevant by AI or any such thing. What would happen is that AI would kind of do the first pass. It will, let's say you are, the different kind of scanning. It will kind of do a first pass and filter and come up with potential uh, barriers, or it will kind of filter out a lot of noise and present a much more targeted info to physicians and doctors to look at it and then validate and see that, okay, this is the right diagnosis, or what action they need to take. So I feel that the hackathon, the concept that you are having and letting different people look around the problems they see and then figuring out which of those problems can be tackled through machine learning is extremely good idea.
So there's a lot of talk about reinforcement learning. How would you explain the concept of RL to a layman?
Yeah, I mean, reinforcement learning is a very advanced form of machine learning. If you look at today, most common scenarios are uh, the most common uses is the traditional machine learning, regression, clustering, classification, things like that. Reinforced learning is where it's very much mimicking like how human learn. So let's say if you want to train a robot to walk, it's like how a kid starts walking. Try to do something and then you fall, or you go and hit a wall and then you realize that you can't pass through it. So it's like creating an agent which does not know much about the surroundings or the system, but have some kind of a rules that, okay, if you if you become if your center of gravity is this much tilted, then you will fall, or you walk into something, you will get hurt. So just by having these rewards and punishment kind of feedback, you can train an agent to do things that are optimal in that surroundings. So that is actually how our even Roomba and these kind of small robots work. I mean, they track, they scan your space, and they also figure out some kind of a feedback that, okay, the sensor as well as feedback. They kind of give the message back to the agent to figure out what to do. So in a very layman term, it's just like how kid learns walking by figuring out what works and what does not work. Reinforcement learning is also exactly similar. Even in games, it is like, okay, you try out a strategy and you lose a game. It's a kind of a feedback to you to figure out, okay, if you do like that, if you move a piece in a chess board like that, then it would get killed. Or if you do something like in Go is a famous example. So all those, and you basically pit different regions against each other. So over a period of time, they learn what works and what does not work. So that's what the reinforcement is. The reinforcement of the truth as the agent figures out the environment. I don't know whether it is useful or still technical, but I tried to explain it in a much
I like
without
the
many technical.
example of you sort of comparing that with how a kid learns. I think that makes a lot of sense. So, Satish, I know you've worked extensively in this area, and you've been prior to Slang Labs, you were with Ola, Microsoft Research, Amazon, even IBM. And the landscape of AI ML in India is fast emerging. How do you see no AI ML no changing the technology landscape in India? How do you see that emerging?
There is a lot of excitement about applying AI in India. Uh, so I mainly come across applications in education technology, fintech, health, and even in agriculture. Actually, there is one startup very recently I interacted with, and they are trying to apply machine learning in agriculture. Um, See, I think um, it's a we are so we have a huge population to serve, and we are kind of scarce on resources. That's the reality of India. That the need that we have to meet and the resources we have, there is a mismatch. So if AI comes and augment, see, we don't have enough teachers, we don't have enough financial advisor, we don't have enough physicians or uh, uh, the technicians who examine kind of medical reports. And agriculture, like 70% of our population is still relies on agriculture. So these are all fields that have a high, like even a small difference can build different. I mean, it can impact lives of many people in many ways. So I feel that in like next 5 to 10 years, all these fields will start benefiting from AI and ML. Education tech and fintech is already it's on the way. Like you can see that a lot of education products as well as fintech products are there, which basically look at your over a period of time, learn about your spending and things like that, and figure out and advise you like what you can do to become better or save more or invest better, things like that. Similarly, agriculture, different kind of soil testing. So for example, recently I met a couple of folks from a startup, and they do this soil testing. And doing the soil testing through traditional chemistry, wet chemistry methods is, it takes time. You can do only so much and only so often. And they are coming up with novel ways of doing the scanning of the soil and figuring out what kind of nutrients are needed, what crops could be planted, how often things can be done, watering, what is the optimal level of water, and all those things. And this would be a much more scalable solution. Again, it will not replace the wet chemistry, but it would be that, okay, you have a much more quicker feedback, and scale would offer benefit to many more people than today who can afford and do it.
Great. I was recently in a conversation with another startup, actually started by a kid who was just out of college, and they were focusing on how to use technology in the agriculture space. So it's heartening to see the application of technology in areas that matter for our country. So,
That's true.
Satish, I always love to ask these questions of the AI experts, if you will. On what do you think are the top three trends in AI and ML that will shape the technology landscape in the future?
That's a very good question. Um, See, there are different ways of looking at these trends. Like, which technology will emerge, which sectors will benefit the most, and things like that. But I'm taking a more generic view. Like, if AI has to succeed, or if machine learning has to succeed, why it would succeed and whether it would succeed, and what are the trends with respect to that. So I have something called three C's: cloud, commoditization, and concerns. These are the three trends in my mind. I'll explain each of them. So cloud is like, cloud computing is bringing down infra entry barrier. Earlier, if you want to do ML, you have to go buy a server, and you are owning it and maintaining it for life. Today, you can buy a time slice, can spin up a cluster, do your computation, pay the rent, and you are off it. Like, the capex has been translated into opex. So cloud, a cheaper cloud, more accessible, easier, cheaper cloud is bringing down the infrastructure entry barrier. So you don't have to today worry about the infrastructure. So that is, I think, that trend has been there for last couple of years, 5 years maybe, and it would continue. I feel that with the TPUs and all these things, it would just become cheaper and more accessible over a period of time. And that would be a very key catalyst, if you say. The second is commoditization. If you look today, and commoditization happens to every technology, and it's not something bad. Today, I mean, like 10, 15 years back, if you want to create a software, the typical software, you would design and will plan, and you will have a team of people. Today, there are no code solutions. I mean, you can launch a website with a decent web app functionality just by filling in Excel sheet. Think about that. Today, somebody can launch a web store for just by integrating with Shopify. So the commoditization of any technology is given. It will happen over a period of time. So I feel that this push would happen, commoditization push would happen from two opposite direction in terms of for AI. So first would be today data scientists or machine learning guys. They are not necessarily great software engineers, but you want to deploy something in production, you need to understand the constraint as well as what it takes for things to run in production, how to scale and things like that. And it is too much to ask for one person to know everything. So a lot of actually AI products fail because of this transition from modeling or a technology that has been, the model that has been trained by a machine learning expert or data scientist, and then the deploying of it. Like this is very, this is where many products actually fail. And so the commoditization of this whole process, if you look at in the recent times, there are several end-to-end machine learning system coming up, for example, even Amazon SageMaker or let's say Google Vertex AI. They're coming up making it easier for data scientists to go and deploy their model in a reasonable way with a reasonable performance. So it is kind of a commoditization of all this cloud knowledge that one has to possess, has to have in order to do something engineering in production. So it's not again going to totally elevate each and every problem, but it is making it more accessible for data scientists to go and deploy their model. The other side is for software engineers. So for example, we do deterministic programming most of the time. The statistical way of doing, like you want to do in machine learning, it is kind of thinking is that you need to know a lot of math. You need to understand all that complex thing behind these algorithms. Now that is also kind of a, and I have seen over a period of time, especially in like last 4 years, that it is becoming increasingly easy for non-data scientists, non-guys to come up and build model, train model. It may not be a model, but it's saying right that a lot of data, basically data wins over time. So if you have a decent model and good data, over a period of time, you can iterate and make the model perform fairly well. So I see a lot of subject matter experts who are not even software engineers. They can now reasonably, I mean, they can't do everything, but it is not as difficult as it was, let's say, 5 years back to try out different models and see how it works. And so it's a kind of a commoditization of even data scientists, data science and machine learning skills, making it more accessible through different kind of frameworks and libraries, even auto AI and things like that, auto ML, things like that. So that's the second trend, that commoditization will continue. And third is concerns. See, when AI becomes part of more and more part of our life, it becomes accepted, then there will be close of different kind of scrutiny. Like for example, is it biased? Is it fair? Is it safe? For example, you are handing over a decision-making process to machines. How safe it is? Like, do they do? And then who is liable if they make? Whose responsibility it is? So, for example, today if you make a mistake, you are for that mistake. But when machines are making mistakes, then the person who created the model, or person who trained the model, a person who deployed the model, or the company who, exactly where the responsibility lies. These things are not today kind of absolutely clear what is the right answer. And finally, what is the impact of AI on jobs? Will it displace more people, or it will more people than it will employ? Whether it will create more employment or more unemployment. These are the things. These are the concerns actually with respect to AI. Now, people who know AI or ML, they they understand it better, so they also know the limitations or the limits of these things. But those who don't know, who are the consumer of these technologies, they not necessarily understand all nuances of the technology, and then their fear as well as concerns has to be addressed for AI to be widely embraced. Without that, I think if people are having apprehensions and fear, then no matter what technology is, it would be hard to make that technology work and deliver some kind of impact to the society.
Yeah. You sort of answered partly the next question that I was about to ask. I mean, you're right. I mean, while AI is significantly impacting our lives, it's not without its challenges. Things like trust deficit. You talked about bias. A lot of people talk about empathy, and then there are concerns around data privacy, data scarcity. These are topics of concern. What do you think is the biggest challenge of these? I mean, the lots of challenges that we will see when it comes to AI. But what do you think is the biggest challenge?
It's very hard to say which is, I mean, at least for me, it is very hard to say which is biggest. I think all of these are important things that you talked about, fairness, that there is a bias in the data, and that's why, uh, with respect to gender, with respect to ethnicity, there have been examples where the text, these NLP examples where somebody has written something where let's say, there is a male nurse and a female doctor, but the pronouns when they are translated to English and translated back to the original language, it has changed the pronouns, making nurse a female and doctor a male, right? So these kind of biases that exist in human society as well as in the data, they can, I mean, it can be a very, very, that's where empathy, understanding, and things like that. How do you teach machines those, those aspects? Explainability will be a different thing. Like, if machine is making a decision and then it is questioned how this decision is wrong or right, and then how the machine arrived to that decision, and whether you have the enough insight to your model and you can explain. So explainability aspect of it, liability, privacy, safety, ethics. So with this great power comes great responsibility. Like, you can do a lot of things, and then this powerful technology could also be misused for maybe segregation, maybe filtering out people and denying service to people, don't know what. So I feel that all these concerns that you raised, um, privacy, scarcity, data scarcity, deficit, trust deficit, bias, all those things, I feel they're all important. And any one of them can become kind of if you have a solution, any one of them can actually can hit you really bad, and maybe may make your technology or product unsuccessful if you are ignoring any of those concerns that you talk.
Yeah. Okay, let me come to my last question. So, Satish, there are lots of developers who are listening to this, and many of them participating in the hackathon. What's your advice for developers either embarking on their machine learning journey or in the journey? What's your advice for them? What are the kinds of skills they need to focus on?
It's a very good question. See, even I am not trained as a machine learning. I'm not formally trained as a machine learning. I picked it up. I used to work in International, which was part of IBM's software lab. That is where actually I met my other two co-founders. We worked there till 2007, and then we kind of went into our way. And 2017, we came together to start this company, Slang Labs. What I want to emphasize by that is that the process of upskilling. I mean, this question, right? Jobs, again, the previous question that you talked about, the jobs the landscape keeps shifting in technology. So it is very important for developers to see how they can master some aspects of machine learning. And my advice would be to 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 start from a very much practical perspective, that first of all, you have to step back and realize that the skill that you already have, that the fact of knowing how systems are developed and deployed, as well as the business aspects of it, are very crucial to make machine learning successful for your product or the domain expertise. Because Machine learning is just bunch of models, uh, but different nuances of business and the product play a very important role for even a machine learning technology to become successful when it is used by real people. I mean, when you put it out in the market, if your model is great, but the other aspects are not so good, it is very likely to fail. So I think the first step is to kind of realize that what you have is valuable. What you know, what you have mastered is valuable. The second step is to figure out what more you can learn. What is your natural inclination? So if you are very much attuned with math, maybe you can dig really deeper and go into mastering the course of different algorithms that power various models. Let's say that is not your inclination, then you can look at how, because now the whole data science and machine learning is becoming more accessible because they are easy to use frameworks and as well as libraries. You can look at more on application, that how you try out different application, different problems and apply and see what happens. And that would give you a necessary familiarity with the whole space for you to become a contributing and confident member of this machine learning. But while you do so, you would also realize that the most important aspect of machine learning is the data. Without having the right data, there is nothing that can be made work. So machine learning is not magic. It is how you figure out what data is needed, how you systematically go about collecting that data. I'll give you a couple of examples. So we're not collecting the data, also collecting the feedback. When you implement machine learning in your product, how you use the feedback, uh, kind of prune out bad models and collect the data that would help you. So if you recently in Google Mail type something, Google Mail guesses the rest of the. And if you press tab, it will write it. If you don't press tab, then it is kind of a feedback that the prediction it made uh, for that application is not what user was doing. Right? So it's a kind of a feedback to the model. So you see how beautifully and without any much of a overhead to the consumer, the product has been designed to collect such feedback. So it's a whole journey, like it's a whole package. You think of a problem, you think of the system, think of the product, you think of the use case and user journey, and then see which data is important. And then finally, how to use the data to train the model. Now you can get into nitty-gritty of the models, or you can limit yourself to application first, and later you can kind of, as you grow more confident, you can look at even in the math. But it is not necessary. I mean, what I am feeling is that now it is actually, it's not very hard to uh, try out a bunch of models and see which works, and then keep feeding it data to get better and better. So, first was that step back and be conscious, know that what you have is important and valuable. Second thing is, okay, what you can learn more. And then third part is how to learn that. Now it is again, various people are different. You might want to go and just experiment and try. You want to take a formal courses, or you want to take even a formal micro degree. So there are all such options are today available. Like there was no better time. I always say there is no better time to learn computer science than today. Only thing you need is a laptop and an internet connection and the will to learn. So if you have that will to learn, there are plethora of blogs, articles, free books, YouTube videos, and whatnot. All sorts of resources are available. So my advice to developers would be that be mindful of all these three. Don't ignore the product aspect and just focus on the model. Similarly, you basically, it takes everything to come together for a successful machine learning product to happen. I hope I answered the question. If you feel that, if you have a follow-up questions, something I missed, please feel free.
No, I think you very beautifully summarized that AI is not magic. All you need is the will to learn, and there's so many resources that are available to learn. But what is important is, for developers to understand that they have to look at it holistically. They have to look at the entire package, as you rightly said. Thank you so much, Satish. It's been a great conversation. I certainly carried away a lot of insights. I'm sure the developers would have too. So thank you so much for taking the time, and we will look forward to having more conversations, on this topic and others in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you again. Thank you again for the opportunity. And it's a very incredible initiative that you guys are doing. And I look forward to see what participants going to build in these hackathons. Thank you for having me.
Likewise. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.